Ever notice how, like, the price of that new gadget you've been eyeing just suddenly skyrockets? You probably just chalk it up to inflation, right? But what if I told you that those global trade wars everyone's talking about could actually be hitting your wallet a lot harder than you think?
That's interesting.
Yeah, so today we're diving deep into a report from the
Oh,
OECD.
yeah, the OECD.
Yeah, they're like the economic detectives of the world, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying all these trade tensions could set off a chain reaction that impacts like everything: global growth, prices, and yeah, even how much you're paying for your morning coffee.
Right, and one of the really interesting things the OECD points out is that even with things slowing down globally, some economies, like China, are actually doing pretty well.
China, huh? So they're kind of like weathering the storm. What's their secret?
Well, the report suggests that China's focus on boosting its domestic market and making strategic investments, in key sectors is really helping them navigate these choppy economic waters.
So it sounds like they're playing the long game.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes you wonder if there are some lessons there for other countries. But let's bring it a little closer to home. What's the forecast looking like for North America?
Well, the OECD is predicting a slowdown, especially for the US and Mexico. And, when we talk about growth, we're really talking about GDP, which is basically a measure of how healthy an economy is.
Right, right.
And for the US, that growth is projected to drop from 2.4% to 1.6%. And a big reason for this slowdown, besides trade tensions, is that interest rates have been rising. And that makes it pricier for businesses to, borrow money and invest, which can slow down the whole economy.
Gotcha. So what about Mexico? What are they looking at?
Mexico is actually facing an even tougher situation. The report suggests their economy might actually shrink this year.
Shrink. Wow.
Yeah, and that's partly because they're so closely tied to the U.S. economy. So when the U.S. economy sneezes, Mexico tends to catch a cold.
Ah, so it's a bit of a domino effect. But the OECD didn't just stop at predictions, right? They also explored like a what if scenario where these trade tensions escalate even further.
Yeah, they call it a generalized trade shock.
Yeah.
Imagine like a global game of Jenga. You pull out the wrong block and the whole tower starts to wobble.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and that's what a trade shock does to the global economy. Suddenly, businesses are facing higher costs for imported materials, which can lead to price increases for consumers, and that's how you end up paying more for, everyday things.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So for our listener, what's the bottom line here? How could this trade war actually hit their wallet?
Well, the OECD estimates that in a worst-case scenario, the average U.S. household could see a loss of around $1,600 in purchasing power.
$1,600. Wow, that's a serious chunk of change.
Yeah.
This really shows how events happening on the other side of the world can have real consequences right here at home.
Absolutely. It really makes you think about, how every time we buy something, we're participating in this complex global trade system.
It is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So, as we navigate all of this, what role do you think individuals can play? What can we do to make informed decisions, not just as consumers, but as global citizens? That's
Yeah.
something for everyone to ponder.